The war room aboard the Dominion of Light gleamed with polished obsidian and pulsing lines of blue energy. It hung like a crown above the ravaged world below, Earth's once green surface now scarred by orbital bombardments and chemical purging. Around the curved table, high-ranking members of the Sarothi Dominion lounged in translucent armor, their elongated skulls shimmering with bioluminescent pride. Holograms of troop deployments hovered in midair. Casualty reports flickered, dismissed. "With scoffs! Snipers!" one general hissed, barbed tongue clicking in amusement. "They still use projectiles, kinetic weapons, like cave dwellers throwing sticks." Mirth rippled through the war room. The consensus was unanimous. Humans were inventive pests, but tactically inferior. Their cities crumbled fast, and their orbital defenses were child's play. The last great stand, New Geneva, fell in under 2 days. From the far end of the chamber, General Vraxon did not laugh. His towering frame was still, arms folded behind his back, eyes glowing faintly orange. Armor marked by centuries of campaigns clung to his frame like a second skin, battle-worn but polished with purpose. Where others wore medals, Vraxon bore scars, each one a memento of victory. "They are not amusing," he said flatly, voice like cracked stone. "They are inconvenient." The others fell silent. Vraxon stepped toward the holotable, stabbing a clawed finger into the image of the Epsilon sector, where several units had gone dark without explanation. An entire patrol. Gone. No explosions, no energy discharge. Just gone. "Do any of you think that's funny?" A junior strategist, emboldened by the earlier mockery, offered weakly, "Perhaps a localized cave-in or some Earth toxin?" "No." Vraxon's tone cut the air. "We retrieved their helmets. One shot. Through each one. No deviation in trajectory." "Sniper?" someone muttered, suddenly less amused. "An old trick," Vraxon said, turning to the viewport. "But one we clearly did not account for. Precision, timing, control. These are not the marks of primitives. These are the marks of a predator." There was silence again, deeper now. Vraxon turned his back to them and gazed out at the planet below. "They're not winning," a commander said, grasping for confidence. "They've lost the planet. They're hiding in rubble." "Yes," Vraxon said, "which means they've begun fighting in a way we don't understand." Months earlier, when the Sarothi Empire descended upon Earth, they expected a straightforward conquest. The orbital fleet dismantled Earth's defenses in under a week. Their mechanized shock troops rolled over resistance like a wave over sandcastles. The species showed grit, surprisingly so, but nothing that matched the tactical sophistication of the Empire. And then came the disappearances. First, it was a scout unit, gone without trace. Then an artillery officer with half a skull and no witnesses. And then, entire field commanders began turning up dead, always alone, always with one shot to the head or heart. At first, it was dismissed as coincidence, then sabotage, then desperation. But the pattern was too clean. Whispers began among the rank and file. Some called it superstition, others called it cowardice. But the fear spread faster than any transmission. They called him the Ghost. On the surface, near the ruins of what was once Detroit, a platoon of the Empire's shock troopers marched with confidence. They scanned rooftops and alleyways with standard-issue thermal optics. The concrete jungle was silent, wind howling through broken windows and steel bones. Graffiti smeared with soot still read, "We resist." "Clear," their commander barked. No sign of movement. "Forward formation." His chest exploded. There was no sound. Just a burst of crimson mist and the thud of armored weight hitting the pavement. The unit froze. "Sniper!" Another fell, shot through the visor. Then another, then two at once. They scattered, diving for cover behind collapsed walls and vehicles. But the shots kept coming. Measured, calm, deliberate. No muzzle flash. No sound. Each target selected, not just by rank, but by psychological impact. The medic, the radio man, the squad leader. Each one felled with surgical precision. Then, nothing. Silence. The wind returned. Above, nestled inside the husk of a ruined cathedral, a figure adjusted a rusted rifle. The barrel, wrapped in strips of scorched cloth and insulated foam, rested on a pile of bricks. The man did not move, did not speak. His breath was steady, his heart slow. He faded back into the shadow like a whisper, as if he had never been there at all. Back aboard the Dominion of Light, Vraxen stared at a freshly delivered report. General Sirat, elite strategist, decorated commander, dead, single hull, dead center of his helmet, no other injuries, no signs of struggle, no trace of the shooter. The general crushed the datapad in his hand. His voice, cold and low, echoed through the war room. Summon all regional commanders. We are at war with an idea, and we will burn it from their minds. Snow gathered quietly over his body like a second skin. The camouflage netting he'd strung above him fluttered gently in the wind, barely distinguishable from the rubble and ash of the ruined landscape. Dawson Rains lay perfectly still, his breath controlled, barely fogging the inside of his cracked helmet. His left hand rested on the stock of an ancient rifle, lovingly modified with carbon suppressors, a manually adjusted scope, and no smart components whatsoever. He didn't trust AI, not anymore. Nothing beat instinct. Nothing beat the silence between heartbeats. Through his scope, Dawson watched the ruins of what used to be a Midwestern city. It didn't matter what name it used to carry. The Empire had burned that away. Smoke rose in the distance from a collapsed hospital. A school still smoldered. Drones drifted overhead, scanning for movement. But not him. They never saw him. The Gioia crosshairs drifted lazily across the horizon until they settled on a patrol of Sarathi troops slinking through the remains of a shopping complex. 4 of them, light armor, nervous, no officers, easy. He waited. The wind shifted. Dawson adjusted half a degree. One of the aliens paused to check a scanner. The others spread out. They moved like prey, not hunters. He squeezed. Psh! The first alien dropped before the others realized anything had happened. A single hole just beneath the chin. By the time they turned to react, 2 more shots dropped the rest. The last one tried to run. Dawson let him get 10 steps before correcting. For wind and placing a round between his shoulder blades, stillness returned. He held his breath another 60 seconds, just in case a secondary unit was observing the trap. Nothing stirred. He finally blinked. The drone beside him, the size of a dinner plate, rotated silently. Solar panels on its back flickered with the last of the afternoon sun. Dawson tapped its surface once, a signal. It floated off without a whisper to scout the next ridge. His hands moved to disassemble the rifle, every motion practiced, deliberate. It came apart in pieces, vanishing into the compartments of his gear like puzzle fragments. He didn't leave brass behind. He didn't leave anything behind. He moved like mist. Crawling backward under his netting, he slithered through the ruins until he vanished into the underbrush and concrete. He didn't stand for nearly a mile. Only when he reached the remains of an abandoned train yard did he climb into the skeleton of a cargo car and sit in silence. He pulled out a small black notebook. 1 page, 4 new notches, each one precise. His face remained unreadable, but his fingers lingered on the page longer than usual. He remembered a voice. Laughter, high-pitched and contagious. His brother Mark, showing off a ridiculous shirt that read, "I shoot better drunk." He remembered the smell of roasted coffee at the camp in Colorado. He remembered their last call, just before the orbital bombardment turned Denver into glass. He hadn't made any promises to command, but he'd made one to himself. They don't get to mock our dead and walk away. The Sarathi thought themselves invincible. Gods in chrome. They didn't understand silence. They didn't understand patience. They didn't understand what it meant to wait 3 days in the same spot with nothing but discipline and purpose to keep you warm. But Dawson did. He moved across the terrain with mechanical precision, every step rehearsed. His hiding places were never reused. His gear carried no active signal. He burned all scents with sulfur powder. He scraped mud from his boots and reapplied it each morning. Nothing was left to chance. They had started sending drones shaped like birds. They used heat-sensing devices with triple-spectrum scanning. They even released psychic trackers that howled when they sensed living minds. He froze his own thoughts in patterns, humming old folk tunes in his head just to disrupt the rhythm. None of it worked. They kept dying, one by one. There were others like him. Rumors whispered through resistance channels. Other ghosts. But none confirmed. He didn't need them. He didn't fight for victory. He fought for erosion. Slow, endless erosion. Until even the Empire's confidence decayed. He remembered New Geneva falling. He remembered their promises of compliance protocols. The burning schools, the broadcast of Earth's surrender on every screen. He remembered the sick pride in the Sarothi general's voice as he mocked Earth's outdated tactics. He remembered Sirat. That shot had taken him 2 days of tracking, 6 hours of crawling, and 1 perfect breath. Dawson hadn't smiled then, and he didn't smile now. He'd seen enough of war to know it wasn't a place for celebration. Only calculation. 2 days later, from atop a ruined tower once known as a library, he peered through his scope again. His drone signaled a large movement coming in from the northeast. Not a patrol, not a search team, a convoy. Dawson's eye adjusted against the scope. There were heavy crawlers, communications rigs, siege platforms. The lead vehicle gleamed with chrome plating, banners snapping in the wind. He counted over 60 soldiers in just the forward column. At the center was a figure twice the size of the others, adorned with ceremonial armor and a cloak that shimmered with microfilaments. Dawson didn't need his scope to know who it was. Vraxon. He'd seen him in the feed when Earth surrendered. The general who had burned the Amazon basin to smoke out a single rebel cell. The Butcher of Greenland. The one who'd said Earth's last defenders were a nuisance, nothing more. Dawson steadied his breath. The wind was strong, and the range was almost obscene. He wouldn't shoot. Not yet. Not until it counted. He tapped the drone once, sending it into silent surveillance mode. It would track the convoy's exact route, terrain, timings, weak points. He adjusted the strap on his rifle and sank lower into the wreckage, letting the city reclaim him again. Finally, he whispered into the cold. The conductors come to hear the symphony. The sound of command cracking didn't come with explosions. It came with whispers. It started with a single elite unit stationed outside the remains of a human city, ordered to set up thermal grids and signal dampeners across a 12-kilometer radius. Every single one of them disappeared within 24 hours. No alarms, no signals. Their corpses were found neatly arranged in a circle. No blood trails. Just a single bullet casing balanced atop a crushed Sarothi helmet, engraved with 2 human words, in hand-scratched English, "Still watching." Vraxon stood over the scene in silence, claws tapping against the grip of his plasma sidearm. The wind howled across the exposed terrain, rattling the makeshift command tents. An aide stammered, holding a scanner that read clean. No life signs nearby, no movement. Vraxon's eyes glowed brighter, scanning the ridgelines. "This isn't warfare," he muttered. "It's performance." He deployed orbital scans over the entire sector. Nothing. He brought in bloodhounds genetically modified to track carbon-based nervous systems. They found only echoes, shadows in the cold, burned skin cells and discarded heat pads. He doubled patrols, authorized psychic dampeners, even summoned his personal guard, clad in exo-armor impervious to most human weaponry. They died next. One by one, on rotating shifts, through staggered routines. Every time, a single shot. No trace. No pattern. Dawson had learned their sensors. He knew how long it took a scout team to circle back. He knew when to trigger false echoes using discarded speaker coils or drop bits of armor to lure them into exposed positions. He carved messages into wreckage, short taunts they couldn't decipher but couldn't ignore. Patient eyes. Wrong war. You blinked. Vraxon ordered sweeps of entire districts. Buildings were torn down, sewers flooded. Each time the only thing they recovered was silence. Then, an entire regiment abandoned post near the Appalachian ruins after 3 soldiers were shot mid-conversation. Their commanding officer had been one of the Empire's most promising tactical minds. They found him curled in a fetal position, whispering to himself. Dawson had dragged the bodies into a line, their helmets stacked. A message scrawled in native Sarothi glyphs with a soldier's own acidic blood. Not your sky anymore. Fear metastasized. They started shooting at shadows. One patrol opened fire on a civilian pack beast. Another detonated an entire munitions depot when a flicker passed across a thermal screen. In one of the shattered arcology towers where the Empire had placed its forward operating base, Dawson slipped through ventilation shafts. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't take any weapons. He just left one polished bullet casing on the sleeping mat of the regional commander, and a red thread wound through a lock of Sarathi hair. The commander shot himself an hour later. For the first time since the invasion, Sarathi Command requested diplomatic intervention. But the messages didn't go through. They weren't being blocked. No one wanted to respond. On the edge of a scorched valley, a young Sarathi foot soldier named Krex stumbled across a human corpse tangled in barbed wire. He approached cautiously, rifle raised. The soldier was dead, days cold. He bent down, poking it with his clawed hand. The corpse's fingers closed around his wrist. Krex screamed, firing wildly. His shots ricocheted off the rocks. Others joined the panic. 4 more shots rang out. Then silence. The corpse was gone. Krex would later write a fragmented report, eyes sunken, voice hollow. They wait for you. Behind doors, beneath silence. They hear your footfalls like thunder. In the interrogation chambers of Vraxen's central bunker, a captured human operative was strapped to a spire of bone metal, his body failing from malnutrition. Even still, he smiled. "Where is your ghost?" one officer demanded. The man coughed blood. "You're fighting a species born to wait in the dark." Then he laughed. They executed him, but no one could sleep after that. Vraxen was tired of games. He authorized orbital strikes, massive bombardments across cities where Dawson had last been detected. No warnings, no evac windows. Entire zones turned to slag. Millions of tons of munitions vaporized concrete and earth. And still, the next day, in the smoking crater of what had once been a resistance outpost, a single Sarathi officer was found dead. One shot, no other wounds, a bullet casing next to his hand. Inside it, etched with surgical precision. "Try again," the general snapped. His eyes burned brighter. His claws tore holes in the tactical maps. "This planet isn't a battlefield anymore," he snarled to his advisors. "It's a canvas, and we are bleeding color onto it for his amusement." He set a trap. A fake command meeting, complete with decoy signals and double-layered shielding. Real bodies. Real ranks. He waited in a subterranean vault with his guards. No attack came. But when they emerged, one of the command drones had been hacked. It played back a single audio message on loop Dawson's voice, just one word. "Now." All over the planet, it began, from mountaintops, from forests, from towers barely standing, from beneath the rubble. One by one, human snipers who had waited, who had trained in the shadows, emerged. Shots rang out, cold, clean, precise. Commanders fell, strategists, signalers, alien field medics, pilots stepping onto shuttles. Each one marked. Each one hunted. The entire Empire command web began unraveling in minutes. Sarathi forces fired in every direction, but there was no enemy to see, just ghosts. The orbital bombardment lasted 2 full hours. Vraxen watched from the observation deck, his arms crossed as the sky lit up with violet energy beams that scorched the earth like fingers dragging across a canvas. Each blast sent plumes of fire and ash hundreds of meters into the air, disintegrating entire plateaus, forests, ruins. Drones confirmed a single heat signature at the epicenter. Stationary, human-sized, breathing shallow. "Burn it until there's no shadow left," Vraxen had ordered. The image feed went white, then black. They cheered. For the first time in weeks, the war room roared with certainty. But it wasn't Dawson. What had burned was a carefully constructed decoy, heated from within, breathing with an artificial lung from a crashed medical bot, dressed in scavenged armor. Dawson had relocated 7 hours earlier, having watched the initial scout drones pass from a distant ridge. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just watched through his scope. From his new perch, a cold, silent ledge inside the hollowed ribcage of a long-dead orbital anchor, he had a perfect view of the Empire's mobile command citadel, a moving fortress that rolled across the battered continent like a mechanical god, wreathed in plasma shields, flanked by gunships and towers crowned with psychic dampeners. Inside the citadel, Vraxen celebrated. He poured himself a drink of crystalline fluid and addressed his inner circle with smug conviction. "The myth dies in fire," he said, voice thick with pride. "They called it the ghost. But what is a ghost to gods with stars in their hands?" His guards laughed. His advisors nodded. Dawson watched them laugh, one eye squinting behind. Cracked optics. The wind howled past his cover. Snow crept up around him. He steadied his breath. Let it slow. Let his heart sink into stillness. This shot had to be perfect. Beyond perfect. It had to be scripture. The citadel was protected by 2 layers of shielding, one for energy deflection, the other tuned for kinetic impact. But shields had weak points, moments of rotation, interference. He had watched the pattern for days, waited for the hum, waited for the pulse in the lower spectrum, a phase flicker only visible if you stared long enough through nothing. Now. Dawson squeezed the trigger. The rifle jolted back, just a whisper of motion. The round, a dense tungsten spike wrapped in depleted uranium, screamed down through the atmosphere faster than sound. It hit the first shield, shimmered, pushed through. The second layer bent, distorted, then cracked. The round entered the view, port just as Vraxen turned to toast the room again. The back of his skull evaporated. A single hole where his arrogance had once lived. For a moment, no one moved. Then, everything broke. The command citadel convulsed. Guards shouted. Alarms blared. Communications blinked and died. Half the control systems failed instantly. Vraxon's body slumped to the floor, still holding the cup. His blood pooled beneath the glass. Alien generals screamed orders. None had direction. There was no one to follow, no plan to enact. The citadel stalled mid-step across the wasteland, like a beheaded beast frozen in place. Across the world, human resistance cells, silent for weeks, erupted from hiding. Underground bunkers opened, signal jammers fired. Artillery scavenged from ruined cities struck alien supply lines. Snipers emerged from rubble and mist, firing in synchrony, picking off lieutenants and tacticians like weeds in a dying garden. Dawson watched the chaos unfold through his scope. He didn't move, didn't reload. He didn't need to. He listened. To the open channels, panic bleeding into them like spilled ink. He's still alive. He's still out there. Pull back! Pull back! The citadel has fallen. Vraxen is dead. He's dead. No orders followed. No reinforcement waves came. The Empire's hierarchy was built around dominance, clarity, spectacle. It was a machine that collapsed the moment. It hesitated, and Dawson had made it hesitate. In the aftermath, as flames licked the citadel's knees and gunships tumbled from the sky with no navigation input, Dawson packed up his rifle. He moved quietly through the snow, back into the ridgelines, unseen, uncelebrated. Just another ghost fading into the dark. But stories travel faster than ships. And across the stars, the tale of Earth changed shape. They didn't speak of cities lost. They didn't speak of surrender, or even the bombardments. They spoke of the hunter who waited, the soldier who never missed, the man who made gods bleed with one shot. In distant barracks, where alien recruits still train for war, some still whisper, if the wind dies and the fog rolls in, if your sensors flicker and everything goes quiet, run, because the ghost is watching.